Welcome to another edition of Cowgirl Logic. I am parked at Jesse and Stacy Westfall's place. They live in the northeastern part of Ohio, and I've been very blessed to stay here for a few days, do some trail riding with Stacy. She's an amazing woman, and if you do not know who I'm talking about, then you have not seen the video of her ride that put her in national view. It's an amazing ride, and it is where she is entering a reining competition, not only bridleless, but bareback. And you can see that ride on her website, stacywestfall.com, S-T-A-C-Y, Westfall.com. And it's an amazing ride. And then I wanted her to share just a little bit. So I took a little bit of footage while we were out on the trail. But what I wanted to share later on in this program is the fact that we are so much like horses. Stacy is going to explain how that ride, that 4-minute ride, was just perfect. But life isn't perfect. And the horses aren't always perfect. And when you're out and about, and like she says, when we're out on the trails, is what they have learned in the arena, is it going to hold when all the opposition and the distractions that come around? Will they stop listening to the one who is the master of them and just take their brain and go with their own thoughts? Or will they stay sensitive to the one who is above them and directing them with your hands, your feet, your voice? It's the same thing with us and God. Life is a constant battle. It's a constant obstruction, offensive against what God has said to us. And it's a test. It's a war zone, actually. Will we continue to hold on to the word that God is saying to us, what God is saying to us in the midst of the opposition of this world and all the distractions that are around us? And the Lord talks about it, and he attains it to like pearls. Will you hold on to the pearl, or will you throw it down when you get under pressure? I hope you enjoy this program, and I know that you're going to love seeing a little bit of Stacy Westfall. All right, well, listen, we're going to go ride, and I hope you enjoy the program. This is so nice. Hey. Looky here, we're recording. We're recording.
Mine's not recording yet. I've got to get hooked back up again.
This is so pretty.
Okay. Attach yourself to each other. Even right now with Popcorn being a little bit antsy,
Yeah.
it's his character coming out, but it's also my ability to communicate with him. If he was always perfect, we wouldn't be building on any kind of language. So it's like my ability to take hold of him and be able to say to him, like, I know that you feel up. I'm gonna put you under pressure and tell you to freeze your feet and lower your head down. His misbehavior opens the door for more communication, so I can actually take hold of him. You know, and right at the moment when he's thinking that he's going to get real antsy and out of control, I get to test everything I've done in the arena and see whether or not it works in life out on the trail.
Right.
Wouldn't it be easier, though, if life was just always perfect? But I don't know if it'd be this wild and pretty. But we kind of want like perfect and easy without any of this like problems that my problem child's having here.
Boring.
Boring. And then you're in the middle of the mess and you're like, I want boring.
I want more, yes.
I want boring.
Yes. Well, you know what, though? That's like how that when we get so down on ourselves because we screw up in life with God. And what you just said, I had another trainer friend tell me the same thing. He said a horse doesn't learn when he does everything right. He learns from when he makes mistakes, and then you correct him and show him that the right way is the easier way. And it's the same way with us and God. He does more training. I've learned more from my failures than I ever did from my successes.
Absolutely. But you know what? I still don't go like, ooh, failure. I know it, and I still resist that idea.
Well,
you know?
if you did, I'd go, ooh, you're an idiot. You're an idiot.
Exactly. But we come out here on the trail, and what do? Half the time people come out and they get down on themselves. Isn't acting perfect? You know, if everything isn't going well, but this is how we build that relationship that gets stronger, but it never, for me, it never gets perfect. There's moments. When people see the ride on the Black Mare Roxy, the Live Like You Were Dying, that was a moment. It's like a teeter-totter. That's a moment that was in perfect balance. And you find those in your life. Right now, everybody gets a chance to find those moments. If you're looking for short, how long was that ride? 4 minutes? I mean, you can find short moments, but the rest of the time, there's some of this going on outside of the ring.
I'm here at Jess and Stacy Westfall's barn and arena. It's a really cool place to be. I'm standing here beside my big old boy Strider, and they've got a really neat place here that is backed up to national forest, literally 98 miles of trails that you can ride on. And I just kind of chose, I needed to come out here, and I wanted to talk about something that God has been dealing with me. And I bet you that he's dealing with a lot of you about the same thing. It is where your focus is, because focus is everything. I am constantly being tempted, it seems, to take my focus off the promise of God and put it on my circumstances. Begin to look at the things the way they are in life, or my circumstances, what's going on in the earth, and not what God is saying. And focus is everything. And I'd like to get into that and just share a little bit of something about that. I didn't notice this before. It was until I read the book, The Merger. If you want to ever check out that book, it's an awesome book. I can't even think of the guy's name, Ron something or another, that wrote it. But The Merger, he brings this point that makes a very good point I want to jump off from. And it's in the temptations of Jesus. And I am here in Matthew chapter 4. And all of the 3 temptations that the devil did with Jesus was asking him to keep his eyes earthbound. Think about it. It says, turn these stones into bread. Well, where are stones? They're down. They're down. You got to look down. You got to look down to get the stones. And then he was like, okay, he takes him up high, and then he says, cast yourself, what? Down. And the Lord will pick you up. And then the last one was, bow down before me, and I will give you what you want. Everything that the enemy came at Jesus was to take his focus from what the Father was saying and showing Jesus to what the enemy. He wanted to bring his attention down on earthbound level instead of the kingdom of heaven level. And you know, Jesus said so many times, I can't do anything of my own. I only do what I hear, what I see my Father do. I only say what I hear my Father say. And so the devil's 3 temptations was literally to get Jesus's focus lower, bring it down to the earth. And if he could bring his focus down to the earth, he could disengage him and get him out of position to where he could walk in the promises and the places of God. And he does the same thing for us. He doesn't come up with new temptations. It's might be wrapped in a little bit different package, but it's basically the same thing. The enemy is always trying to cause our focus to come lower, and our focus is everything. If Jesus would have, you know, like, okay, the temptation to turn stones into bread. If you say, well, that must be wrong. No, if turning stones into bread was wrong, then turning water into wine was wrong. The action wasn't wrong. What was wrong was the source of the inspiration, and it was an earthbound source. It was a lower source. And so to answer that lower source, he had to switch gears from listening to the higher source and taking on the opinion of the lower source. And I'm seeing this as hugely important in this day and hour. And if you've been watching any of my programs or listening to any of my teachings very much, you will have heard me say this before. But in Luke chapter 21, when Jesus was talking about the signs of the end times, he's Luke 21, there around 26 or 28 verse, where he said, men's hearts failing them for fear, for looking at the things that are coming on the earth. So what caused fear? When they started looking from this lower level. All right, now where I'm going with that is a chapter in Matthew, chapter 7, where Jesus says this. He said, verse 6, Matthew 7, verse 6, where Jesus says, give not that which is holy to the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you or tear you up. What in the world does pearls have to do with what I'm talking about, keeping our focus, kingdom bound or earth bound? Has everything to do with it, because I believe that a pearl, and when Jesus was talking about a pearl, because he's not talking about physical pearls. Shoot, there's a whole bunch of us won't ever even have a pearl, not a real one, in our lives to throw at a hog, okay? So it ain't about throwing pearls at hogs, all right? And when I was growing up in the hills, I remember preachers saying that was talking about don't even talk to people that aren't ready to accept Jesus, because you're just casting your pearls before swine. That ain't what he's saying at all either. What is a pearl? I believe that a pearl is a symbolic of a promise from God. A promise, the word of the Lord, a promise from God, okay? Every one of us have been given promises from God, everyone. Now, you may recognize it or you may not recognize it at the time, but the whole issue is, if you're listening to the Spirit of God at all, he is giving you some sort of a word for your life, some sort of a promise or a reason, a purpose for your life. And the whole key is to hear and to respond and to hear that purpose. Well, God has given me things 30 plus years ago. I mean, one of the things he gave me was a vision. It was literally, it was an open-eyed vision. It was like the room disappeared and I was in another place, and I was involved in a move of God I have never even heard of happening on this earth. Okay, well, I thought that thing would come to pass surely by the time I was in my 20s or 30s, and here I am in my early 60s and it still hasn't come to pass. So I'm very tempted to, when you hear the voices of the enemy saying, well, you've screwed up, or you've not done what, you obviously have missed the boat. You obviously must have heard wrong, because you thought God said that. Well, that was just something else, blah, 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 blah. Because it hasn't happened yet. And what happens is we hear these thoughts in our head. And it is the same thing as when Satan was tempting Jesus. It was to get our focus off the promise, off of what was higher, what God had said to us, and bring it down to earth. Bring it down here where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, the nitty-gritty here and now. And the devil will say, well, are you any closer? Does it look like it's coming? Is it going to happen? Have you seen any of it happen yet? And what we can do is, the swine there is the demonic. The demonic will come and seek to get you to let go of what God is saying to you, possibly about your life, possibly about your purpose, your focus. Whatever he's saying to you, a word of encouragement. Maybe you've got kids or something that's gone off and they're out in the world, and God has given you a promise that he'll bring your kids back, that he'll take care of it, and you don't see any of that. You see them drunk, you see them high on drugs, you see whatever going on in their lives, and now you're very tempted turn loose of that promise because of what you see. It's still the same temptation, is to get your eyes away from. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed that, like when Jesus was being tempted of the devil, if you'll read in there, you won't read in there at all about the Father intervening and going, wait a minute, now I said this. Remember, Jesus, I said this. Don't listen to him, Jesus. I already promised you that. It's like they say, the teacher is silent whenever you take a test. Teacher is silent. So when you're going through these times that everything in your life and everything about what you're going through is yelling at you that the promises of God or what you believe God said about something is the exact opposite. It's not going to come to pass. Have you noticed that in those times, God is silent? Why? Because it's a test. Because he's already given you the answer. Now he wants to know, will you hold on to that answer or will you throw it down? And that's what this scripture is talking about. Don't cast your pearls before swine. Your pearl is a promise from God. And casting it before swine is throwing down that promise because of what is going on, the temptations that are going on in your life and in your head at that time. Now, how is a pearl made? This is why I believe it's a promise, because how is a pearl made? We know that a pearl is made through opposition. It's made through irritation. That's how a pearl is made. A grain of sand gets in the oyster and it begins to irritate and cause friction and irritation. Okay? God is saying, my promise to you is going to draw the enemy. The enemy is coming after the pearl. People say the devil's after me. He ain't so much after you as he's after the promise of God in your life. The enemy is coming after that promise. If he can get you to throw down that promise, then he has won a victory in one area of his existence, because whatever God has given you that promise for is going to kick his butt. And if you throw it down, then you've taken the victory away from God and given it to the enemy. And so he's always after the promise. He's after that pearl. Notice something else, that the gates of heaven, the Bible says in Revelation, are one giant pearl. I believe that the pearls that God gives you and I, the promises of God, that is my part of that pearl. That is my part. God says, I give you this promise. This has got to do with something in your life. Now, will you hold on to it? And if you hold on to that promise and you feed yourself, your focus has to feed on, no, God said this. I'm not going to fall into what it looks like, how it feels like, what's going on, what I can see. My wisdom, my understanding is coming from above, not from what I'm going through right now. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you're not camping there, you're not staying there, and it's not death, it's just the shadow of death. It is the darkness that comes in to say this, it's all over. You're going to die right here. He says, no, I'll walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and I will fear no evil. So you hold on to the promise of God during that time. And I believe that those who hold on to that, when their promises are being assaulted, when you hold on to that, you are literally becoming a part. Your pearl becomes a part of that great pearl that is part of the gate, the entrance into the New Jerusalem. And know this. It's important to know that all it takes to get saved is belief. You just, to enter into salvation, you just believe. But to enter into kingdom power, you have to overcome. Read the 2nd and 3rd chapter of Revelation. where it talks about the reward to the overcomers. Oh my gosh, they're incredible. The rewards to the overcomers are incredible. You'll eat from the tree of life. You know, you get given a new name. You sit with God in his throne. It's amazing, the promises for overcomers. Well, to be saved, you just believe. All believers aren't overcomers. The overcomers are the ones who hold on to the promises of God when everything around you is assaulting that promise. When everything around you is saying it's not going to happen, it can't come to pass, blah, blah, blah. You're an idiot for believing it. Do you see any evidence of it? Do you see that it's going to come to pass? No, and you have to honestly go, no. Doesn't matter. When you're in the middle of that test, the teacher is silent. The Father has already spoken. He doesn't need to keep tapping you on the shoulder, saying, hold on, because he's trying to raise up warriors that are strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, not people that have to be propped up all the time. So it's not going to be easy. It's not meant to be easy. If you're going to be an overcomer, you have to have something to overcome. You have to have victory over opportunities to give up and fail. And so I believe with all my heart that these pearls is my piece of an entrance into the power of the kingdom, into kingdom power, into kingdom promises, into fulfilling the reason I'm here on the earth, what I'm here to fulfill, the reason I'm here to fulfill and what I'm to fulfill and who I'm to become. It isn't always about what I do, it's who I become that God is looking at. And he wants to know, can he trust us? Can he give us a pearl? And we guard it against the demonic assaults, against the assaults of this world that says God doesn't do those things anymore. You must have misread it. God won't stand with that. And I've thought about it this way. I'm just going to kind of close this out, but I thought about it this way. Is if I never get to walk in the fulfillment of what I saw, I at least my part is to be faithful to not throw it down. I can't make the promise come to pass, but I cannot throw it down. I cannot throw down that promise. That's why the Bible says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Where are those promises assaulted? In our head, in our thought life. God wants you, he says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My thoughts are higher than yours. My ways are higher than yours. God gives us his thoughts. And then we are in this lower level on this earth, and we are faced with an onslaught of lower thoughts. And God is just waiting to see, watching us to see if we're going to be faithful to hold on to his thoughts in the midst of being assaulted with the exact opposite. Where are you getting your information from? Where are you getting your focus? Where are you getting your passion for life from? Are you holding on to what God has said to you? Or do you go through days, weeks, months, years of just believing? Que sera, sera, what will be, will be. Then you're throwing down your pearls and you're giving your victory to the enemy. The enemy has no power to run roughshod over you and have victory. The only victory that the enemy has on us personally is what we give. What we give. What we treasure. I can treasure the promises of God so much so that I am willing to go through some of the assaults of the opposite of that promise and still hold on to it because I treasure it. You know, Esau did this. When he came in from hunting and he was hungry, and Jacob was fixing his pot of beans, and Esau said, give me some of that, and Jacob said, well, sell me your birthright. Yeah, it won't do me no good. I'm just dying of hunger. If I'm dead, you know, well, that was ridiculous. And he said, yeah, I'll make that agreement with you. You know, people say Jacob cheated him out of it. No, I mean, I can't say that was honest. Yeah, but that was an agreement right up front. And that opportunity was, Esau, how much do you value these promises, this promise of the inheritance? It didn't mean nothing to him. He was in for instant gratification. He felt he was hungry, his stomach was gnawing, and beans at that moment was more important to him than an inheritance. That's how the enemy gets us. He gets us to throw down our pearls to give us a moment of relief. And then when you throw that pearl down, you basically are on his ground, and he can steal from you then, because actually not steal, that's the wrong word. You gave up an inheritance because of the pressure. You gave up a kingly inheritance because of the pressure. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it, but it's a fight, and there's no way around it. It's a fight. And so I just want to encourage you, whatever God has spoken to you or whatever he will speak to you, hold on to that. And you say, well, what if I was wrong? What if I heard wrong? That's why I keep journals. If you keep a journal, then you can go back and go, was this right? Was this wrong? Anyway, I keep journals. Hold on to what you believe the Lord has said. Don't throw it down. Keep your focus high and let God do the rest. You do your part, and God will do his.